So we're going to start. Please continue to eat. We're going to have a panel discussion. I'm going to introduce the folks. They could come on up. First is going to be our moderator is Deborah Lamb. Deborah is the Managing Director of Smart Cities and Inclusive Innovation Institute for People and Technology at Georgia Tech. She's been a great help to GMA as we started to take on some smart city stuff, and we're working with them in the Smart Communities Challenge, which Chambly mentioned and got a grant from. In Albany, Georgia also received a grant for some smart city work. They're doing it. Not yet. Our panelists will be Bill Bruton, City Manager of Marietta, who you heard earlier. Farhad Islam, he's the IT Director from East Point. Russ Madison, the Finance Director from Decatur. And Kristen Byer-Smith, Assistant to the City Manager here in Sandy Springs. So we have a variety of folks, so they're not all IT, they're not all city managers. They're going to have a little bit different perspective on this. And so for the next little while, we're going to let Deborah have this mic. And then if you all could share, we'll share this when she starts asking you all some questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. Thank you for inviting me. Thank you to GMA. Hello, everyone. How is everyone? Great. Happy Friday on a very, very busy holiday season. So I wanted to start with this in a more discussion sense, because I think this morning you really had some really high power presentations in terms of how technology, data, and security are really driving a lot of your projects in terms of trying to improve city operations, efficiencies, and ultimately improve the quality of life for your residents and citizens. Because that's kind of the driving force behind all these different technology and data improvements. So for this panel, per Brian's guidance, I think I want to have each of our panelists introduce themselves a little bit and obviously explain why they are here on stage in terms of their work, and then for me to ask them a few questions that will facilitate some discussion, and then open to you in terms of your questions, and spark hopefully some good dialogue from that. All right, so without further ado.
Okay. As was said, Bill Bruton, City Manager in Marietta. Obviously, y'all heard some of the things we're doing a little bit earlier, so I won't take a lot of time on that, and I'll just hand it off to the next folks.
Oh, well, just say a little bit about what you're doing.
I mean, we're obviously doing what we were talking about earlier, which is a lot of work on signalization and trying to tie the community in with our different traffic management software that we're putting out there in the field. We're also doing a lot of other different things. One that I touched on a little bit with the parking, with being able to go in there and actually use AI to figure out what is happening in a parking lot. We've been experimenting with a lot of other things too. I mean, not only just parking, but being able to use the same technology to take a look at crowds and figure out not only how many people you have in the crowd, but it even gets to the point of telling you, when's the last time those individuals showed up in that particular park. It can, track that because of your phones, obviously. And then, tracking age of the crowd. You can tell by the gait of the individuals and how they walk and stuff. So there's a lot of different things that you can do that we're experimenting with. And I guess that's kind of the attitude we have, which is try to figure out what we want to accomplish and then experiment with technology to figure out what the best option is for us.
My name is Farhad Islam. I'm with the City of East Point. I'm the IT Director, and I've been with the city for the last 3 years. We are obviously IT involves with every department, everything you can think of citywide, and we have been very fortunate enough to have a council and mayor along with city manager, very forward-looking and wants to engage IT in terms of providing efficient services for our citizens. So some of the projects we are engaged with is we're trying to tie in our AMI, SCADA, along with public safety for emergency management. So that will increase our efficiency as well as provide warning early on what to look for in emergency situations, as well as weather is changing right now, so we could get ready for those situations as well. So among those, as well as how we can use GIS, leverage GIS to bring in more efficiency. Like Nick mentioned in his presentation, you have your, transparency and you have your shared knowledge, and then you build the trust from it, So we have a lot of work to do with our citizens, Obviously, if you know about East Point, we are a city next to the, Atlanta Airport, and we have a very, in terms of, it's a crown jewel if you think about it, hidden crown jewel, You're next to the airport, next to the city of Atlanta. You don't need a car to go around, you could take the MARTA. So that smart city plays into our strategic location also.
Thanks, Deborah. I'm Russ Madison, Finance Director for City of Decatur. And as Andrew mentioned earlier, we don't have an IT department in City of Decatur. We outsource the IT services. But what we do have is an internal IT governance committee made up of representatives from all our departments. So we have a collaborative approach to IT decision making. And I chair that committee. I also coordinate a group of civic tech volunteers, is what we call them. These are about 10 people who work or reside in the city of Decatur who have IT backgrounds, or some of them are retired from the IT industry. And we have them come in periodically and advise us on some of our public-facing technology initiatives. So overall, we don't do things, on our own. It's not a city manager-driven IT environment necessarily, or IT department. It's input from the various stakeholders throughout the city. And I can talk a little bit more about that, but I think it helps avoid surprises in the long run. And Decatur is sort of known for public input, and so I think we try to do that with IT as well as our other services.
Hi, my name is Kristen. I work for the City of Sandy Springs in the City Manager's Office, namely doing research and special projects. So one of my recent special projects has been working on smart cities. So we had a ton of projects going on that you would classify as a smart city project, but we didn't really come together and coordinate that effort. So what we did was to form an interdisciplinary group of our staff to come together and really to provide a forum for those people to coordinate amongst themselves, figure out what everybody else is doing, and to brainstorm new ideas. And the other idea behind the group is that hopefully we'll have different people who aren't serving on our committee come to us with problems they have, where they're looking for a solution, or if they're evaluating a new technology that they're thinking about bringing into the city. We really want all of those to come before our committee so that we can talk about them, figure out if that works with all of our other services, and if it's something that we really need. So that's kind of where we are right now, where I'm trying to coordinate that and create a work plan. We have a 2019 and 2020 work plan on what we know our projects will be for that time period. So we're moving that forward, and next year we're looking forward to a monthly meeting where we talk about a new project idea or just a problem that we're looking to solve as a group, and try to figure out how we're going to move forward with those.
Thank you. So you can already tell there's a pretty wide range of approaches that each of our communities here are dealing with in terms of technology, community engagement, internal engagement, and data all around. And so the first question I have for all our panelists, and something I think we get asked a lot, is that from a local government perspective, and this is for all of us as well, we're at a critical time right now. We are asked to do a lot more with less in terms of our resources. There are obviously very changing revenue models in terms of where we're traditionally getting information. And there's a lot of new technology that's being, inundated to local government in terms of changes or improvements that can be made. And with all that nature, the expectations of public is stronger in terms of what you need to do with what you have, with what the technology they believe could address a lot of these. So, the first question is, with that,
especially with firefighting, the competing priorities, where do you start? How do you start? How do you decide that this is the approach, that makes sense for Marietta or Sandy Springs, and how do you move forward, with that starting point? Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. I think it's important, though, at least for us, we have everything centralized. And so, a lot of departments, and I know a lot, out there in a lot of different counties and cities, you have IT individuals that are focused within that department, and they go out and they go to conventions or different meetings, and they come back and say, hey, we've got to have this. This is the latest, greatest, or I've seen it with another place or another municipality, and we need it. And they sell everybody on it, and then the government goes and buys it and puts it in, and then realizes it doesn't communicate with anything else that they have. So that's what we really try to focus on, is we have a very centralized IT department that is system-wide. We don't let the individual departments have their own IT people. We instead do all of our planning from the IT department. They go out and they interview all the individual departments and divisions we have within the city. They do that on a continual basis. And then each year they put together their priority list from each department of what they want to achieve. And then we meet as a governing body as far as the staff goes. And we figure out what those priorities need to be for the government, not necessarily for the departments. And so we do that prioritization on the upper level and really try to figure out, you may have two departments that say, well, we need a new system in order for the courts, or whether it's for firefighting, and to keep track of all of our records. Well, we may be able to go in and go ahead and adapt something we currently have and make sure that then it accomplishes the same goal they want, but maybe it takes us a little bit longer to get there, but we can do it internally, and it actually works with the tools we have. And that's a lot of it, is just trying to figure out, we don't always go buy something on the shelf. Let's take a look at what we have. Right now, all of our data in every department is linked to a property address. Everything we have. So that has really allowed us to get out there and do more with less, as you're saying. And we don't have to go out. I know some other governments have gone out and they bought all new software to do one particular function for a department. It doesn't communicate with the other software that they have with the other departments. And it's kind of like a standalone. And so once you have everything linked to that in that database, then you're able to do a lot as far as a lot of analysis that you wouldn't be able to do otherwise. And it also frees up the data among all the other departments, so they're able to communicate. We had a group from another country come in, and they took a look at our system, and they got into an argument. Two of the department heads, and it was a big city, bigger than Atlanta. And I said, well, what are they arguing about? Because they had a translator. And the translator said, well, the one department head's yelling at the other one, saying that's exactly what I told you we need to be able to do. And the one looked at him and said, well, yeah, if you would open up your data and allow us to see it, then we could do it. But everybody's so scared to share the data, there's no way we're going to be able to do it. So that's, I guess, what I'm most proud of with our folks, is that's the attitude we have.
So we go a little bit step farther. We believe our citizens are bosses. We go to them initially, and we have community meetings. We have survey forums, and ask them, what do you like to see in the city? What in each budget session, Before we adopt the budget, we go to the community. We have community meetings, and they'll give us a priority list of things they like to see get accomplished. Then we bring those priorities internally, and obviously we look at the dollar figure that cities are generating, and what can we do from it? Then you have requirements from different departments. What are their priorities? And at the end, I, as an IT director, along with the city manager, get to sit with each department and identify what are their priorities, what can be funded, what cannot be funded, what can be deferred next year or following years. So, and based on that, obviously, we identify these are the list of things. We take to the council and mayor. They give their priorities and they give their blessing. At the point, you adopt a budget. And once you adopt a budget, it's a good thing about my city manager is he moved IT from each department into IT department. So I as an IT director get to have a saying on what can be accomplished. Let me give you an example. We started engaging in a SCADA project about a year and a half ago. Water department wanted SCADA, power department wanted SCADA, but they wanted two different SCADA systems. But it doesn't make sense if you think about it. So as an IT department, our job was mediate between these two departments and streamline it and utilize one vendor to both water and power SCADA, along with tying into your AMI system. So if you have isolated silo departments, then you're not able to get most for your bucks. And that way, IT comes in, do things that make sense from technology standpoint, as well as financial standpoint, where city can save money and move that money to do something else. So that's where, and in terms of competing priorities, we get obviously direction from the council and mayor. And as well as council and mayor takes input from us and make their decisions.
Well, indicator, to your question, Deborah, is, how do we, there's a lot of expensive solutions. So which do we pick? Well, the civic tech group, like I mentioned, the public input, but also our strategic plan that we've already got in place as a city, we evaluate those priorities. Because if we do go to a conference, Bill, like you're saying, and there's this amazing technology, wow, that sounds so awesome, and we come back and look, well, this isn't supported by the plan or by what the residents actually want to see. So that's what we kind of use to evaluate some of these amazing technologies that are out there is, does it fit in, does it address an actual pain point? We've done some work with Code for Atlanta, and that's a question they'll ask us is, well, we can partner with you on the solution, but what problem is it addressing? Oh yeah, we didn't think of that. So that ends up getting scratched off the list if we can't actually improve a situation or somebody's quality of life through the solution.
Yeah, I would definitely agree. One of the things that we do similarly to the other cities, we have a 24/7 call center. And we track all of the calls that come into the city. So we have them by category, and we can go and look and see what is it that people are actually calling about. What is the information that people are looking for? What do they need? What questions do they have? And we can take that data and make decisions about where the city's priorities lie in terms of what our citizens actually need, providing good customer service through the feedback that they're giving us just by calling.
Great. So what I'm hearing across the board among all four of these communities are you're starting one internally, right? Ask your department directors, ask the people that are on your team, what are the priorities, what are the challenges that they're facing right now, and then at the same time you're also engaging in some community development or community engagement activities in terms of asking your fellow citizens where are their pain points, where do they want to see the city, and collectively with these two voices doing a prioritization process and then sticking with that plan even as new flashy objects come in and ensuring that follows or adheres to your plan across the board. Now with that though, it gets into the second question, which is all four of you mentioned your team, right? And the team in local government is obviously the backbone, the most important part. As all of you face. And so, but what we're seeing in terms of trends, and I'm sure all of you feel it, is that we are aging as a society overall, getting older. People are working longer, but there is going to be a silver tsunami that's coming, especially with local government. It's going to be interesting to see how we can attract a new generation of workers to come into public service, especially when they might have other options, especially when there's a gig economy in which they have more flexible options, and even retain workers, because obviously the best and brightest have different options. So tell us about what's your plans or your strategies to build that team and retain that team and attract that team in order to push forward on your strategies, because obviously behind each of us is a really strong
people factor for the strategies? And how about we start that way?
So I would definitely agree with you. Local government, a lot of times for young people, is not exactly where they're going. I think for Sandy Springs, one of the cool things about our new city hall is that we're now in a walkable area, and that in and of itself is helping us retain our staff, because now they can walk and go to lunch, and there are all these new amenities that people are looking for. I think we also are trying to be flexible within our departments. So there are certain groups of people that we know, to attract the best people in this field, they don't like to be here at 8 a.m. So maybe we are flexible on what time they come in and what time they go home. Maybe we allow for more work from home days when they're needed, those kinds of things. I think flexibility is really the key for us and how we retain our staff moving forward, and giving them cool projects to work on. And that's part of what this Smart City Working Group was designed to do, was to sort of give everybody a cool new project that we can all come together and work on, and give them a sense of purpose for what they're doing here.
So I think one of the advantages of using an outsourced IT solution is they're getting a constant supply of fresh blood. They don't tend to keep people as long as city government tends to keep people. So we see with our IT provider, they're routinely bringing in fresh talent, fresh pairs of eyes. So I to some degree leave that up to them, but also the fact that we do have cross-departmental teams. We're always onboarding new members into those teams periodically, where we've tried to change it from membership on the committee being a life sentence to being a 1-year commitment. And so that's kind of our way to get away from the same people doing the same tasks for years and years and years.
I think it's especially important in technology. Those of us who work in technology know that the market is extremely hot right now. There is not enough technologists out there to fit for all these companies out there. So it's a difficult position for city governments or county governments to compete against your world of Google's, Facebook. We cannot pay $150,000 to somebody and work for City of East Point, or that's not possible for us. So we look at other ways. I think there is other ways to attract talent. I think it's important that you build relationship with the universities, colleges. You go to different venues out there. Georgia, technology associations. You go there, build relationships with them people. You know people who can refer people for you. So you have to go out more than before. You're dependent on your HR to get to people. That's not going to work anymore, especially in technology. You have to go out there, recruit on your own people actually, and find out those talents. Sometimes, like I'm going to take an example of Dominic, who gave a presentation earlier. I think I got Dominic because I was able to offer him the flexibility. I understood his need. He has a young family. He cannot come to work at 8 o'clock. I don't need him to be here at 8 o'clock. He said early on, I'm not going to be able to be here at 8 o'clock. I'm not going to travel. I said, that's okay, we're city government, you don't have to travel, You used to be a consultant, you're traveling, 60% of the time. So these kind of things, we can offer as a city, that flexibility of scheduling, the time off that you need when you have your young child sick, you could take time off, And my manager, city manager, is really into those kind of things, and he gives us, all of us, that flexibility to allow our employees to work, from home, as well as, any way that's shaped and formed. So it's about going out there, being more active, finding out talent, before they become hot commodity, and you bring them in, if you also, other thing I look for is passion, Are you passionate about what you do? And especially in city government, or state government, you have to look for people who cares about public service. Not necessarily about the money, not necessarily about making $150,000 or $200,000 working for Google. but it's about other things. What makes meaningful for you? You know, is that money most meaningful to you? Or is that serving your community and being part of something different? That makes a lot of difference, and that you have to sell that to your prospective employees, you know. And other things you have to, with millennial, you have to think about. I'll take Dominic an example as well, is he has passion about certain things, which is not IT related, I'll tell you, you know. So you have to allow him to do those kind of things, you know. Conservation, triathlon, it's kind of his thing he likes to do, you know. And that's, and as IT director, you have to think about how does that fit into the city businesses. Yes, it does. It fits into city businesses, your planning department. You know, so if he knows more about triathlon and engagement with them, you know, that's going to help with us being a, you know, green city, you know. So that's kind of thing, you have to think more than just technology. You have to understand the city businesses and how does that fit into it. So you could provide them with different incentives, what caters to them and bring them in.
Definitely want to echo what's already been said. It is really tough right now. I mean, not only in the IT sphere, but everywhere. I mean, we're having problems with engineers trying to bring them in. We've got, you know, large power company, tough there. It's even tough when you're talking about police and fire, even to try to recruit people. The mindset's changed. They're not looking at benefits. They're not looking at retirement. They're just looking at what is happening now. I know we sit with people, you know, trying to recruit them every week, and we say, okay, we don't pay Social Security. We give you a separate amount of money that you get to self-direct. And they say, well, but they're paying me X amount. And I'm like, yeah, but the 6% isn't coming out of your check with us. But they can't, you know, it just doesn't sit with them. And so we've gotten to the point where we've had to actually break down checks with what they get paid first week with us and compare it with other local governments and say, this is what Cobb County's paying, this is what they're doing, this is what you'll take home once you deduct your health insurance and everything else. This is what you got in your pocket. So we have to deal with that. But then once we get them, then what do we do with them? It's the same thing that these folks have been saying. It's you got to figure out what motivates them. And it's a little different than, you know, when I first started, definitely. I think you've got to have that public sector attitude, you know, with individuals you recruit, because if you want to keep them, they have to have that desire. But also a lot of it is motivation through being a little different in what they do. Don't put them in a box and say that this is what your job is. Be a little different. You know, we've got some folks that are in IT that are project managers. And we found that they had the capability. We wanted to keep them. So we said, well, you know, you're going to direct projects for 4 departments. And I know you're an IT guy, but you know how to figure out something and take it from beginning to end. So we're going to try out your skills in that way. We got a guy who's really good with drawing and marketing and all that. So we let him do a lot of that. And that we expanded his job description and included it in there so that there again we could keep him. But he provides that service to a lot of folks. But I think part of it too is saying to your individuals, we want you to be innovative. We want you to think about new things. We want you to think about what the next great idea may be in IT, and we're going to give you some time to explore that. And so I know you're not out in California at a think tank, but hey, let's do that some here. And take, you know, if you've got some interesting idea, we'll give you that time to go ahead and explore it. Maybe it is something that then we dump more people into and we really start going after it. And that's where a lot of our great ideas have come from. It's that a department will sit there and say, we need to do this, and we need to buy these things to do it. And then our folks, we say, think about it for a little bit. And they say, well, yeah, okay, I can accomplish the same thing, but I can do it quicker, a whole lot less expensive. Mm-hmm. And I've got a team of 3 or 4 people that we can build it ourselves instead of hiring that consultant to do it. And so we let them do it. And they've gotten the respect, let me put it that way, they, not we, they have gotten the respect of all the other departments to the point where the other departments listen to them. And so I think part of that respect factor too, the way that everybody feels about them, makes them feel really good about working there.
That's fantastic. So to summarize, so obviously public service is obviously a motivating factor. You know, what's the motivating factor for, you know, someone to want to work in local government? But 2, what what is being offered for a new workforce is the flexibility, not only in terms of how you work, when you work, but in terms of balancing your personal and family needs, but the flexibility of actually even the job and its evolution as it goes through different passions or needs of local government, and being able to provide that. And then it seems if all else fails, outsource. But all right, so let's take some questions from the audience to see who has questions for this panel. And I think Brian has a mic.
Come on, someone's got a question. I'll ask one. So for the four of you, just what's the reaction, or how our city, the elected officials, does the whole smart city thing kind of like, we got to do something smart cities, or do they just kind of let you do what you've already been doing through your budgetary process and the way you just come up with your program and move forward, or has there been any kind of pressure to do something that's smart city?
Well, I don't think we got pressure to do anything, but I guess mayor and council realized the improvement that we are making it more autonomous, making more efficient. That things that used to take 4 hours now takes 20 minutes. Because I think a smart city is how you define it varies by each city. City of Atlanta has a different definition than I do as a East Point, because our needs are different than City of Atlanta's. Traffic control is a big thing for Smyrna or Cobb County, but as a East Point, it's not that big of a deal yet for us. But on the other hand, picking up garbage is a big deal for us. So how do you make those distinguish between, instead of the latest fad versus what actually adds values to your cities and constituencies? You have to identify that and use technologies for those kind of things. And that's what we define as a smart city technologies.
Well, I say Decatur has a great city commission that doesn't meddle or force ideas. They let us develop those internally. But I would say that was one of the factors that led to the development of our privacy policy in the city of Decatur, because we knew from our civic tech group that privacy was a concern. And before we got too far, or before these ideas came in from elected officials or from other sources, we wanted to have that addressed from the outset, so that before we were encouraged to look at a certain vendor, we would already have a framework in place to evaluate their privacy standards, so that whatever happened, we were kind of ready and had at least addressed it to some point.
I know some of our council got really fired up after the last GMA event, actually, about smart cities, and they came back and they were really excited and they wanted to know what we were doing. And I think they're generally just really supportive of whatever we're working on. If they have a new idea, they'll bring that to us, but they usually sort of let us do the work. And then in January at our council retreat, we include some of those items as priorities for the upcoming year, and they're pretty much always supportive of whatever we're working on. So.
And Marietta's the same. I mean, we've got a city council that's very, very supportive of our IT department. They know what they can do. They give us ideas. They do go to conferences and come back and say, hey, this other city, Austin or whatever, is doing something. Could we do something similar? And then our folks explore it and try to figure out, is that something that we could do that would fit with our community? We also would have liked some water. We've got the largest electrical municipal power company in the state. And so we have a lot of work we have to do there. And actually, 10 years ago, we had a lot of vendors coming to us saying that you want to be a smart city because you want to have smart metering. And we want to sell you all this so that you can do the following. And they wanted to do lease programs with us, and we'd be locked into them, for 10 years. At that point, we looked at it, and the IT department and the city government decided, let's not do that. Let's go ahead and do things on our own. So now we have smart meters that we've installed. We have a program that works for us. We have been able to save money by doing it. Another example, I mean, we got a radio system that we just are putting in right now. And instead of just going out and going with everybody else and buying certain things and doing stuff, we actually tried out, we formed a committee, and our own smart committee on the radios. Involved a lot of departments, went out, put out RFPs, came back, saved $500,000. So we haven't had to raise taxes in, I think it's about 15 years. And a lot of that I'll attribute to the fact that the smart technologies we're putting in place are making it where we don't have to hire people. And when we had the recession, we didn't have to hire people back, which was good. I mean, we didn't have to let anybody go, but we didn't fill positions, and we were okay with not filling positions because the technology was able to come in and do more with less. And so our elected officials, the citizens, I think, too, with all the apps we've given them and the different ways to communicate with us, they can report any kind of complaint they have in the city on a My Marietta app, and they let us know, and it tracks it by number, and they're able to go in with that number, and they can see if a department has actually looked at it, if they've answered it, when it's going to be repaired. So I think all of that together has made everybody really rely on the experts we have within the department.
I have a question. What are some low-tech smart cities projects or things with low barrier to entry?
Great question.
Oh, Langdon.
So go ahead and I'll provide some answers to that. So actually, there's a lot of actually good examples of low tech, and it actually goes back to the people-oriented solution, and I'll even acknowledge another university as I give this example. So recently, Syracuse, the city, partnered with Syracuse University, and this is another example of university and city partnership. And the city of Syracuse was having trouble collecting property taxes or tax liens, right? Something that I think a lot of communities have issues with as well. And obviously there's different technologies that look to address that. But what the researchers did was they used handwritten notes to actually send out to the property owners of their tax lien. And actually received $1.47 million back from that process. So, it was just handwritten notes versus like the official letter that said, you are owed your taxes. And that makes a difference, right? And so I think fundamentally what our panelists are saying time and time again is, despite all the different technologies that are coming out, and because they're always, evolving and going forward, fundamentally the heart of it is that personal touch. Whether you're personally touching the team members within your own department or within your own city or within your own community, or you're reacting to their needs externally. And so, we can, be very forceful about technological improvements, and we should. But I fundamentally believe that at the end of the day, as far in advance that we can be in technology, local government will never be run by robots. Right? And you can quote me on that. We can automate a lot of things and we can make technological improvements, but you're never gonna get that robot mentality, because that personal touch to the citizen is very effective.
I'm not gonna say this is low tech, but it's simple. Which is trash was spoken about earlier. Yeah, it's a big deal, no question. Every day we're out there and we're dealing with somebody on that, and we would get constant complaints. And when we have a holiday like we have coming up, everybody forget. When do you put your stuff out? When you not? When do we come in? All this kind of stuff, and it was driving us crazy. So we put an app in place that for us might not have been low tech. I mean, we had to put it in place and get it all going and load all the systems with all the data. But for the public, it's real simple. All they do is every day their phone goes off at a certain time when they choose. If it's normally 7 at night or whatever, when they would put something out, it goes off, and it tells them, okay, tomorrow's your recycling day, put your stuff out. Or the schedule's changed this week, they're not picking it up tomorrow. They're going to pick it up Friday, and it lets them know, per address that they're at. And so, real simple, but boy, is it taking a load off us. And it's real easy.
I think I could give you an example. The low tech, in terms from technology standpoint, is if you look at our website, we have a ticker going on. You know, when you cannot reach, people say boil water warning, or if you're closing down a section of the road or main corridor, you could communicate with obviously SeeClickFix and other apps, as well as in your website, you could put in a ticker basically with a red warning, basically saying, you know, boil water for the next 24 hours. So that's another way to communicate with your citizens. That's quite easy technology. It's not high tech or anything.
All these examples coming out.
We got one more question.
Yes, hello. So I'm curious to know, what are some realistic issues that you have in each of your cities that technology cannot fix? And how do you plan to exercise your leadership or that on behalf of your city, counties, and government officials to deal with it?
All right, and I would say just go very briefly down. You want to start? I don't want to start.
Thank you, Dominic. Well, if you look at our city, we have a high senior citizens populations, and so technology in some senior citizens doesn't play well. So you still have to continue low tech, if you will, to communicate with them, as well as high tech that you want to attract the millennials. So it's a mixed bag, if you will. You know, you do want to have a diverse community along with millennials, as well as older, wiser population that can tell you about how East Point used to be 40 years ago, 50 years ago. You don't want to lose that identity. At the same time, it's a challenge for us. How do you cater to the mixed bag of population, if you will? And that's a challenge for us, but it's a good challenge to have, and I think that's a good thing because that's touch your humanity part as well. Not just, you're not a robot, you're working with a person, and you have to understand how that person will react to different things that you're putting out there. So it's important that you have a feel for the community that you're serving as well.
And kind of in the same vein, I think social services and housing are two areas that it's really tough for technology to go in and solve the problem. I mean, with social services, you've got to figure out, how you can deliver those services to individuals, and mostly it's not high tech. It's going to the individual and being able to get them the service they need, or being able to get them to you so they can get the service. And they're not going to be sitting at home on the computer trying to figure out, where they're going to live the next day. For the most part, or how they're going to get food, that they need, that's a tough one. But I think on the technology side, it can allow you to figure out what those needs are, and you can track those needs, and then you can use the technology to try to pair up the individuals that do need the services with the services that are out there. So they may not see it directly, that they're interacting with the technology, but those service providers can get some assistance by using the technology and figure out how to use their resources in the most efficient way.
Yeah, and let me just end by that question is a little bit misleading, because I feel that actually what the panelist is saying is that technology is a portfolio of a toolkit, right? It's just one of the many different things that local governments can use in order to address very complex challenges with different constituents across the board, while it's senior citizens or millennials or whatnot. And so we really think of technology as just another empowering tool that could be used in our broader toolkit of resources. And I think that's kind of what's being seen here, is at the end of the day, technology can never replace the person in terms of that personal connection. And, it can be empowering, but ultimately, we need to use it more to address a challenge rather than as an end state of just installing a sensor. that you should never buy the sensor to install the sensor, right? What is the sensor trying to address, whether it's traffic congestion or parking management or, 311, etc. So with that, I'm gonna end this panel and give a round of applause for our panelists.